I'm very happy to lead the Student Advocate panel for this year's summit. Our panelists attended the summit last year and participated in Olympia Days, so they can give you an idea of what working with WA-SEN is like from their experience. So we'll start off with some introductions and get straight into some of the questions that we have ready to ask our panelists. So from the panelists, if I could ask each of you to tell us your name, pronouns, school, majors, and the participation that you had with WA-SEN.
Okay, I'll go first. My name is Richie Martinez. My pronouns are he, him. I go to Columbia-Basin College. I'm studying cybersecurity. I'm in my last year, and I'm also working as a cyber analyst intern at Pacific Northwest National Labs. I started with WA-SEN as a student like yourselves. And quickly I could see that I really liked what was going on with WA-SEN and what the vision was and the goal. I wanted to find out how I can get further involved. And so I became I became a campus liaison for my school. And I enjoyed that work as well. And when the opportunity came to become a regional coordinator, I did that. And I found it to be a very valuable experience and to be, um, uh, I'm going to remember it for the rest of my life, to be quite honest with you guys. It was really important work. And WA-SEN, on a separate level, it will always stick with me as well, the network, because it is the most inclusive, diverse network that I've ever been a part of in my life. I was really happy to share that with my kids. You see every walk of life, you see every type of person, and it's so welcoming and encouraging. So outside of advocating for funding for higher education, there's a underlying thing happening within WA-SEN that is just above and beyond that. And so I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Richie. Thank you. We're so glad that you're here with us today.
I'm currently a student in organizational leadership master's program at Eastern Washington University. I am an alumni of Grace Harbor College, and my journey started being a campus liaison for WA-SEN, moving into a regional coordinator position. And the experience has really taken me quite far. Probably not as far as I would like to go, but I'm currently stepping into the Washington State president position for TRIO programs across Washington State, and will be advocating for TRIO programs at a policy seminar in March. So, yeah.
Thank you, Shelly.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being with us. And then our last panelist.
Hi, I'm Destiny. I use they, them pronouns. I go to Western. I'm a senior political science student. I started off at BTC, Bellingham Tech, as a medical administration and worked in their the director of legislation position, which is where I heard about WA-SEN. And so my final year there, I applied to be a coordinator. I didn't start as a liaison. And I worked there last year at WA-SEN. And I remember it was a little weird because we were still post-COVID and figuring things out, but honestly, it was a lot of fun. I made a lot of friends. I met a lot of people, especially like as in regions, I think we have like 15 schools. So like I met a lot of people I would have never had the chance to if I wasn't in WA-SEN. So it was definitely a really good opportunity. And I definitely recommend if you have the chance to like stay involved with the group to do it.
Thank you, Destiny. We're so happy to have you here today too. So before we get started in our list of questions, I do want to give a disclaimer. For timing purposes, we may not be able to have each panelist answer every question. However, if there is anything that you feel is so important or you feel so convicted to speak on, please feel free to jump in and add anything. Okay, with that being said, I will start. Oh, actually, no, I will not start us off. Our first question will be coming from one of my liaisons, Zaira.
Hi, I'm Eastern Washington University's liaison. This question is directed to Shelly and Destiny. What advice would you give a student constituent who is nervous about connecting to their elected officials?
So I can start with that one. I think the biggest advice to remember is that they're just people. Honestly, the worst interaction I've ever had with a legislator was just some guy who was a little uninterested. For the most part, it's always been a really good experience. They really want to hear what you have to say. So, and it's okay to be nervous, I think is the other thing. Just practice. The more you do it, the easier it gets to talk to people. I think it's also practice, like it's a very vulnerable thing to be in this space and do this kind of advocacy work. But practice makes it a little bit easier to start. And once you start, it's easier to keep going.
Thank you, Destiny. Shelly, what about you? What advice would you give a student constituent who is nervous about contacting their elected official?
Every student is nervous. That is a given. Really just echoing what Destiny said, but also maybe adding that the risk is worth it. And stepping outside of your comfort zone is growth for you. So I think it's really important to just a little bit, and you never know what doors will open up for you and for other students in doing that. So just really, just kind of embracing that discomfort. And the great thing about WA-SEN is they have less stressed at that point.
Thank you, Shelly. And furthermore to that question, do either of you have anything specific that you can say to a student who is questioning the importance of civic engagement?
Yeah. So a lot of the people who are in these government positions are usually quite a bit removed from their time as a student. And our society moves very fast. What it's like for students now is completely different from what it was like for students 20 years ago. So I think it's really important to remember that currently you are the expert of what it's like to be a student and the only person who's really qualified to talk about these situations with legislators. So that's why it's really important for us to be out there and talking to them about these issues.
Thank you, Destiny. Is there anything that you would add, Shelly, or was that just perfect?
Her answers are perfect.
Good. Thank you.
Um, yeah, I guess I would take the risk. It's worth it for you and everyone else that you go to school with. So that would be the one big thing I would say. Just take the risk and pay it forward.
Thank you, Shelly. Thank you, Destiny. Going on over to Richie for our second question. Richie, what was your favorite part of engaging with legislators during Olympia Days? Do you have any specific stories you can share? And were there any perceptions or myths about interacting with legislators you had before meeting with them that changed?
I'll start off with most memorable moment, which happened this last Olympia Days, this February. In my group, there was one lady in particular who was very nervous to share her story and didn't want to. She would practice. She'd practiced it. We practiced together, but she said straight out she really didn't want to unless she had to. She was just nervous, you know. And but she when it came time to speak, she was brave, and she did. She spoke and shared her story, and by the end of the day, she was sharing her story. You know, she kept sharing at each appointment, and she found her voice and she found her confidence, and I got to see it firsthand. I experienced that myself, but to see it happen to someone else was empowering. And it was an awesome experience. Um, and it was very important on for us. Someone mentioned earlier today, I can't remember what speaker, about advocacy in general. Yes, we're advocating for higher funding, but advocacy is important work in our lives, and that's what I learned from this experience through WA-SEN, is that we're going to continue to advocate for ourselves in every way, whether it's in the healthcare system, whether it's for housing, whether it's for opportunities to eat, a job position, whatever it is, we've got to find ways to do that. And this experience is valuable in finding our voice and empowering ourselves to be able to do that in our future experiences. And the big myth, I think, is that they sit on a pedestal above us. They're public servants. They're very down to earth. You heard Representative Ibarra talk about wanting to watch football today and have a beer. And I think that really speaks to how human they are. They don't sit above us. The position is important. That it deserves respect. Our legislators deserve respect, but they are also people, and we are just as important when we share our stories as they are to hear them.
Well put. Thank you, Richie. To further that question and also shine light on an opposite end, did you have any meetings that were more difficult? And if so, how did you navigate that?
Good question. Yeah, I did. I was nervous like everyone else, and it's funny because it was my first um, meeting. I thought went really good. It was smooth. Somehow I was nervous and I just landed it. But then by my second one, I ruined it. We're our own worst judge. We're our own worst critics, and I just didn't feel like I was speaking well. I didn't feel like I was making all the points that I wanted to make like the first time. But I'm the only one that noticed. Everyone, we're all here to support each other, and the representatives are also very supportive as well. So that's what I learned from that experience: is that no one's going to let you know, you did horrible. We're not judging each other in that way. We're all winners because we were brave enough to do it in the first place.
Thank you, Richie.
You're welcome.
All right. For our next question, this question is first for Destiny. Destiny, can you speak to what it was like engaging in issue-based advocacy versus lobbying? How did you avoid coming across as lobbying? And lastly, how do you respond to a specific request on active legislation?
So for the first part, in some ways it's easier to do advocacy versus lobbying. In some ways it's much harder. You don't have to remember bills. You don't have to know current policy on anything if you're doing advocacy work, but you do have to be really vulnerable, and it's really hard to tell your story, especially if it's not something you're used to talking about, or if you're a more private person, but it's very important. And especially the advocacy work that we do in Olympia with WA-SEN, a lot of it is the importance of supporting students in their journey through higher education, which I think the best way to avoid coming across as lobbying is just to remember that. It's just about the supporting them. It's about not speaking to specific bills. I think is the best way it's been put. Is just if someone asks about a bill, just comment and say in my current role, I'm unable to comment on that. It's very, very normal for people to come to legislators in different roles, sometimes lobbying, sometimes advocating. So it's perfectly okay just to say I just can't comment on that in this current thing that I'm here for.
Thank you, Destiny. Shelly, do you have anything to add to question number 3? Can you speak to what it was like engaging in issue-based advocacy and lobbying versus lobbying, I mean?
Yeah, sure. I would say that a majority of the legislators that I met with over the couple of years about bills. So I think that's a less happening occurrence. But in the cases of legislators who would bring up oh, this bill, it's really simple to basically state to that legislator, that is not what I'm here for today. What I'm here today to do today is to educate you on what myself and my peers need. And I think it's as simple as that. And that a lot of times will shut the door if they're choosing to kind of bring those bills into place. And as Destiny said, it's a lot you feel passionate about. When you feel passionate about something, your story shines, and people, and that isn't just legislators, that's just people in general. Like, we love to hear people's stories. It's what impacts, knowing we're not alone. And so I think it's really, if you go into it with that perspective that you're going to share a story and that you're going to create something bigger than yourself, I think that the lobbying can be squashed fairly quickly, because that's what I would add to that.
Thank you, Shelly. Richie, is there anything further that you would add?
Yeah, I encountered this, and one of the things that was really cool was it early on is that there's usually an extra person, and typically it's a regional coordinator or even a campus liaison that's there in the meetings with us. And many times, if they see that the student is struggling to answer those questions, in my experience, I saw a coordinator jump in and say, we're not here in that capacity, we're here to advocate, and they handle it very professionally. And so their support, always remember their support. You're never left alone as students in these situations, and it could even be a fellow student in those situations. I just want to encourage other students, if you see your fellow students struggling and you have the words, then step in that brief moment, and do what's right.
Thank you, Richie. As I'm sure you all remember from previous summits, an activity we value is beginning to mold our personal story in preparation for Olympia Days, which is what we just did before this panel. So this question is directed for all of the panelists. Once again, does not matter the order, however ready you are to answer. How is preparing for Olympia Days? Do you have any pro tips that work best for you? And is there anything you wish you would have thought of before experiencing Olympia Days?
So I think preparing for Olympia Days, the story sheets that we filled out are super important. I wish I had mine from last year. I have my folder that we get from last year, and it's like covered in notes that I took while I was like talking to other people or listening to other students share their stories. The biggest thing is that the day before, you will be put into your groups. You have the time to talk to people and like work on your stories together. And that's a really good time to like make friends and like discuss what you want to get out of this situation, and like prepare. And I think one of the other things is that people work in different ways. So if you're the kind of person who works really good at just like, going off the bat and like talking about things, and that's perfectly fine for you. Some people, it helps if they write it down. Like we worked out a script in my group last year. So I think like taking the time to like coordinate and plan that with everybody. And then the other thing is that the night before Olympia, please go to sleep. Last year, like we made so many friends. I know North Region, especially, we had like a group of people who were just like best friends. They didn't sleep, and the next day they were so tired. There's so much walking. You're talking to so many people. So make sure you get some sleep the night before.
Thank you, Destiny. Shelly, would you like to answer the fourth question? How is preparing for Olympia Days for you?
Lots of practice. And I know, as Destiny said, we all work differently. So finding that niche of what works for you, maybe that's videotaping yourself so you can kind of see how you're portraying yourself. Maybe that's practicing time a few minutes before, or however that setup looks. I think practicing is really a big part of that. And just, being in that brave space, right? As Aaron mentioned before, being in that brave space to know that you're there for a reason, and you're advocating for what you feel is right and is needed. So just really having that time to reflect and practice. That would be my recommendation. And what I wish I would have thought of at the time. I guess I wish I would have considered myself as a started. There was a lot of fear because I felt like I was stepping into a place with people who had power and who were bigger than myself. And so I encourage all of you just to consider that, you know, you're all already leaders because you're in this space, you're a leader. And just remember that.
Thank you, Shelly. Richie, how about you? How was preparing for Olympia Days for you?
I think the biggest thing that I learned was to try to make my story high impact. Try to drill down into the most important parts of what I was trying to relay. So I have a couple different funding, personal stories of funding and how it affected me. And I just tried to narrow it down to that and just get straight to the point with those issues to make it memorable and easy. And then I think it's also important to remember the call to action. I know in a couple of my appointments, I forgot to even make a call to action. And so that's very important that we remember the Washington Opportunity Grant, that we remember equity for financial aid and those things that we're advocating for. And so don't forget the important reason why we're there is to share those things. And also, I would like to let everyone know that on the other side of that, these senators, they go and they have to vote on the budgets for higher education, right? And when they're speaking to their fellow colleagues, it's some of our stories that they use on why they're defending their stance on an issue. So don't feel that it's not important and we'll never know, but it could be any one of our stories, which was the one that they resonated with, that they're sharing to say, this is why we need to keep this bill in place, or this is why we need to add more money for this person right here. And those like them. So just remember that.
Thank you. Thank you, Richie. Richie, I've heard through the network about the commendable way that you articulate and condense your story. It's important to articulate your experiences in a condensed manner, perfect for legislative appointments, which leads me to my next question. Can you share your story with the group and furthermore, how it felt sharing your story with legislators?
Well, I wasn't prepared to do that, but here we go.
Thanks.
Hello, legislator, senator, so and so. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. I really appreciate that. Here to share with you some of the ways why funding is important to me. Oh, sorry, backtrack. My name is Richie Martinez. I go to Columbia-Basin College. I'm studying computer science. And I had a issue last fall where I applied for financial aid and I didn't get it. It didn't go through in time. And luckily, I applied for some scholarships. And it was those scholarships that paid for last fall's quarter of school. And without it, I would have had to take time off of school. So that's what kept me in school for that time period. Was those scholarships, and currently this year I stopped receiving financial aid because I went to school about 10 years ago and dropped out, and I used a year of financial aid in that time, which took off funding for my final year of school. And the reason I'm here today in school is because the Washington Opportunity Grant. That's what's paying for my final year of school, and that's why it's important for students to have those programs in place. Because without it, I wouldn't be achieving my dream of a higher education, and that's why I want to impart to you as a call to action to continue funding for the Washington Opportunity Grant and look at ways that we can help grow it and add to that program, because it really does benefit a lot of people. Um, yeah, I guess I wasn't really prepped for that. So that's the really short, condensed version of it. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story, Richie. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I think you did
No,
great,
that's
though.
no big deal.
I think you did great. And we actually do have a good amount of time where we can take, I think, I'm looking at Chris and Kayla questions from the chat, because I already see one question that we had, or we used to have. It disappeared, but I remember it, so I can ask it. If that's okay with Chris, Kayla, Dr. E. Okay. So the question I remember seeing in the chat was, what is the most important thing that you took away from your WA-SEN experience? And before either of you answer that question, if anybody else has any questions they'd like to ask our student panelists, drop them in the chat now. Yeah, would either of you like to answer that question?
I think the most important thing I took away from it was honestly just the practice. When I first started doing anything with talking to legislators, I was always super nervous. But just recently I was talking to somebody and they were like, oh, like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. Now I just love bothering legislators. Now I just love being like, hey, there's like this issue and I think like we should talk about it. You can just like straight up make like an appointment to talk to a legislator. You don't have to do this like through WA-SEN or anything else. You can just do it.
I love that. Thank you, Destiny. Richie?
Yeah, I want to reiterate what I said a little earlier because it was very unexpected for me. And that was that's the diversity that WA-SEN represents. I have a daughter who's a sociology major. She's really involved in equal rights for all people, right? And she's a big fighter for those things. So I just felt so proud to tell her about my experience in WA-SEN and how inclusive WA-SEN is, and how welcoming it is to all people of all walks of life, of disabilities, of every race, gender, and sexual orientation. And it just feels proud. I feel very proud to be involved in a group that is so welcoming in that way, because I think it's important. I think that, that's how we start to open doors for people, is when we welcome all people to the table and hear from people's different experiences. And that was just it's not even talked about. It just is. And I just want to shine a light on that because it's a very special experience.
Thank you, Richie. Okay, well, I would like to say thank you both, and Shelly. I know she dropped off, but thanking her in spirit for being with us and being willing to share your guys' stories and answer my questions, even though some of them might have caught you off guard. I apologize. Yeah, are there any last things that any of you would like to share?
I could throw in a question if because I know I worked with both of you last year, so we all kind of experienced this. Can you speak to town halls and different opportunities that come up that WA-SEN does get involved with? But while we do hold Olympia days, there are more activities. Can you guys speak to that? Have any comments?
Okay. So after Olympia Days, I know from my experience as a coordinator last year, leading up to Olympia Days, it's super busy. And then like right after Olympia Days, we jump into doing like town halls. I went to 3 town halls. We had Denise back then who put together a list. And then I would reach out to people in my region and be like, hey, there's a town hall with these speakers. Like, do you want to go with me? And like, so we would just like get together and go to these town halls, and like usually they're super packed and you don't always get to ask questions, but it's still a great chance to hear what your local legislator is doing. So it's definitely like WA-SEN isn't like a one and done thing. It like continues. So it's definitely important to like stay up to date with what people are doing for your like regional coordinator.
I think it's a great question, Kayla, and it's really important because we had a conversation about this. I know that I didn't even understand the importance of town halls until most of them had already passed. I was lucky enough to attend a few, but I wasn't engaging the students in my network to get involved in the town halls. And I just want to impart, because I learned this from Chris, that WA-SEN is also a brand, right? And it's important to share that brand with legislators every opportunity we get. And those town halls are opportunities for us as students to share what our needs are with our legislators, another opportunity, but also to share the importance of WA-SEN, to build the brand and let them know that we exist and we're out there and we care about higher education funding in all its forms for higher education. And so, yeah, this year I'm glad that we're starting off with the town hall right out the gate. And I want to encourage students to attend as many as you can and look for the town hall schedule as it comes out. And also, I don't know if you're aware, but many of your professors will give you extra credit for attending town halls. So, yeah, I encourage you to ask which ones will. I know I got a couple that do for me. So take advantage of that.
For the folks in the room that don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, we weren't really sure if we could do a town hall. We thought that we might be crossing lines or getting too close to lobbying. But because of all of your participation here and the outstanding participation that we had from our legislators, we proved today that we can produce our own town halls, and we don't necessarily have to be dependent upon the town hall that the legislator is doing in their specific district. And what I would say to every one of you from the sense of advocacy is that if your college is interested in doing that, I know that WA-SEN would be very interested in helping produce a town hall, whether it's virtual or live, at your college. And for the administration of colleges, they love the idea that a legislator is going to come to their campus. And we love the idea that a legislator is going to come to your campus and talk to issues that have to do with the needs of students, all the things that you talked about today. And that's extremely important. We represent across the state over 500,000 students and in all sectors. And this can be done. It's proven today that it can be done at a regional scale, individual scale. This is very much, we talked about this earlier today with, I talked about this with Chris earlier today, that this is a big part of our brand of who we are. Very, very grateful that everybody hung in there with that through that legislative piece, which I thought was just outstanding.